Hello, good evening, viewers. I am pleased to announce the return of Dr. Michael Salla. It was about 3 years ago now, I think, when we did part one with him. And his level of knowledge on everything from aliens, the Anunnaki, we spoke about Elon Musk last time. The link to part one's in the description box, as are all of Dr. Salla's links. And the drones thing as well, which has been huge recently. We will touch on that. So thank you to Dr. Salah and Beverli for coming on. And viewers, get your questions in now if you want us to put them to our guests. And Beverli, I imagine that you probably have some opening questions. Oh, you're still muted. Let's see. There you go.
Yes, I do have. Thank you for coming to be on the show, Dr. Salah. It's absolutely wonderful to see you here. Long time ago, we've crossed paths, must be about 15, maybe 16 years ago now. So it's nice to see you again. Some of the things I was interested in was, the exopolitics aspect. So looking at how ourselves as earthlings and people living on this planet, where we're looking at the changes that are coming and possible first contact. Some of the questions that I get asked a lot, and I'm not always sure how to answer it because it's your area of expertise, really, is what do you think with the first contact, if it's made public, that is, and it's not kept a secret? What do you think is the first things that we as human beings should be considering or thinking of if these individuals were to make contact with us?
Well, thanks for having me back on the show. It has been a few years, and as far as first contact is concerned, I mean, there's been contact that's been ongoing for decades, at an official level, unofficial level. What we're talking about is kind of open mass contact, where the entire world is going to know about it, and where the mass media is going to be talking about it, and people will be kind of like discussing who the aliens are. And I think what I can tell from what's been happening over the last few years, especially the last few months with the drones, is that we are moving forward in a coordinated way, that the people that are in charge of this, even though that they might disagree, people talk about black hats, people talk about white hats, and I think there's been competition between them about how to reveal all this information. I think what we are witnessing is a kind of compromise that is unfolding. And with the election of Donald Trump and the elevation of Elon Musk to this kind of key position, and he, of course, is known for his innovative technologies, I think what we're going to see is an unveiling of extraterrestrials, but in a way that doesn't make them out to be gods or beings that are so much more advanced than us. They're going to be like, oh, okay, these are beings that have these advanced craft, but guess what? We have our own advanced craft, and and so I think they're going to do it in a way where the public isn't going to be kind of too shocked or too much in awe. I mean, there will be some of that, but I don't think it'll be to the extent where people will be like, wow, I mean, the aliens have all the answers. They can heal our world of disease and poverty and give us free energy. I think it's going to be done in a way where it's like, well, they're kind of like a little bit ahead of us, but not so far ahead. And we are kind of like close to them in terms of like technological development.
You've got a lot of questions. You've got a lot of questions coming in about the Anunnaki. I'll just give you two of them for now. And for people who are not familiar, we might have to give some definition there as well. So the first one is from Albina. Is Zachariah Sitchin's theory about the Anunnaki true? I've always wondered why an advanced civilization would use living beings for labor. There is no logic. And another one here. Are the fallen angels the Anunnaki?
Well, as far as the second question is concerned, I think the fallen angels, they were a rebel faction of the Anunnaki called the Igigi. And you see this in the Sumerian records where the Igigi rebelled against Anu, Enki, Enlil, who were the kind of like superior gods, and the Igigi rebelled against them, and so there was a war, and eventually kind of peace terms were reached and so forth. So I think the fallen angels that are described in the book of Enoch are very likely this group of rebel Anunnaki who didn't want to do the slave labor or didn't want to mine the gold, didn't want to do the heavy labor anymore, hence their rebellion. And so that's where you come now to Zecharia Sitchin and his interpretation of Sumerian texts. Now, I mean, it's very controversial, but I think Sitchin was correct in a number of things that he had to say about the Anunnaki genetically engineering humanity as a worker force to dig in these gold mines for gold that the Anunnaki needed for their own technology, prolonging their life, and so far and so forth. I think he also described the conflict between the different Anunnaki accurately. That is, you had these conflicts between Enlil, who was the sky commander, the commander of the space fleet, and Enki, who was the chief scientist, the chief geneticist, and they had their own ways of thinking and doing things, and they were half brothers, so there was this rivalry between them that eventually kind of like became this full blown. Well, there was conflict all the time that led to the flood, and of course the stories of Noah is a reflection of Utnapishtim or Zia Sudra in some of the older Sumerian texts, being helped by Enki to escape this kind of great flood that was orchestrated by his half-brother Enlil. So I think all of that is basically correct. But nevertheless, Sitchin does have a lot of controversy about what his agenda was and how he tried to build a kind of cult, a worship cult around the Anunnaki.
Thanks for that. And we've got a lot more people watching now, Dr. Salla. So are you okay to tell the viewers a little bit about your background and expertise?
Sure, yes. Well, I was a university professor teaching international politics at the School of International Service in Washington, D.C. And in May 2001, I saw the Disclosure Project press conference that was organized by Dr. Stephen Greer. And it just shocked my world, my kind of way of looking at the world. I was at that time kind of like pretty conventional in terms of thinking that I did believe extraterrestrials were real. I thought that they were somewhere out there, but it didn't occur to me that they had been visiting us and interacting with humanity, and that this was all being covered up by the government. For some reason, I just didn't think that. And to see these 21 witnesses that Dr. Stephen Greer brought forward at that press conference to reveal, the little bits of the puzzle that they knew about, that painted this big picture of a cover-up of extraterrestrial life that goes all the way back to the Second World War. That just shocked me. It was like, and my world changed because the more I dug into that, the more I researched it and spoke to people, the more convinced I became that this was the truth, that they really were visiting us, and that there had been meetings, there had been agreements, technologies exchanged, all sorts of things, and all this was being kept covered. This was being covered up, and so I simply couldn't do what I was doing before. I couldn't go in there and teach about international politics and just talk about international conflict and what are the sources of conflict and how we can resolve that, when I now understood that a lot of international conflict is a cover for these vast black projects that are designed to raise funding for these extraterrestrial related projects and kind of technologies that are oriented towards building really advanced anti-gravity craft without the general public knowing, without the legislature knowing, and that this was also being done because the US didn't want their peers, other nations, knowing about this as well. But they did share among the Five Eyes nations. So I think the US, Britain, Canada, Australia, and to a lesser extent New Zealand formed this little club where they would kind of monopolize or share that technology among one another and use their respective advantages in terms of geography, scientific personnel, to be able to build these craft. And I think now by 2024, now we're virtually in 2025, we are much more developed in terms of advanced technologies that are part of these secret space programs. And so I've been studying all of that since 2001, and in the process I've written now 14 books on different aspects of that extraterrestrial cover-up, and I was one of the ones that helped coin the term exopolitics, which is all about the politics of extraterrestrial life. And I'm still doing it now after, 23 years now, and I'm still as fascinated as I've ever been by this whole field.
Thank you for that. And let me just tell the viewers then, so Beverli is co-hosting tonight with Dr. Salah. So if you could keep your questions specific to Dr. Salah, that would be great. We do have Beverli coming on New Year's Eve. Yeah, doing a mega long psychic live stream, and we will be getting through as many of your questions as possible. But for this evening, Beverli's obviously going to contribute. I'm going to ask her about Atlantis in a minute. But we've got a few more questions coming about the Anunnaki. So I'll give this one to Dr. Salah now, and then I'll get Beverli's thoughts on Atlantis. All right, so Sim is asking, did Atlantis derive from the split in the Anunnaki?
Oh, that's a really interesting question, and people have different positions on that. Now, I don't believe that the Anunnaki had kind of global control. I think the Anunnaki were predominantly concentrated in the Middle Eastern areas of what we understand as modern day Iraq, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, that region, and that there were other extraterrestrial groups in other parts of the earth, and there was competition between them. Now, I think Atlantis had some kind of connection with Enki, I think because he was this scientist, and some believe that he was the god Poseidon in the kind of Greek pantheon. And so, I mean, all that's possible, but we do know that the Atlanteans were very much a seafaring civilization, and Poseidon, the trident, was an important symbol for them. So there is that connection between Enki and Atlantis that is well worth kind of like exploring. But by and large, I think the Anunnaki were focused on the Middle East in terms of their rule, and then you had other groups helping the Anunnaki, helping the Atlantean civilization come forward. Some people talk about a civilization called the Alteans, who are this very advanced galactic civilization from another galaxy, actually, who helped establish Atlantis. So they're a separate group to the Anunnaki, even though there is coordination between them. So I think in a way, if we look at the ancient world, it was pretty much similar to the colonial world, where you had like the British, the French, the Spaniards, the Portuguese, kind of like vying amongst themselves for control and influence in different parts of the planet. But yet, they would try to manage their conflicts in a way where they wouldn't have conflict at home, but they would kind of have these proxy wars on the high seas. So I think, in a way, extraterrestrials were very similar in terms of their colonies on the Earth, that they would have competition. There might be proxy wars occasionally between them, but I think that's about as far as that went. And of course, you had Plato talking about one of these wars between the ancient Greeks and the Atlanteans.
Okay, Beverli, anything to add on the Anunnaki and Atlantis?
Yeah, so when I was in South Africa, I went to quite a few hundred sites actually, that during the time we were looking at the different types of gold that were mined there, and most of them were going back sort of 500,000-600,000 years. Originally, I think individuals thought that the way that the stones were arranged could have been some sort of a battery. And then we realized, and Dr. Michael Tellinger has done a lot of work on that, slave species of the gods, where there's across all of South Africa and up into Zimbabwe and other areas, there's like nearly 2,000 sites that you can see where they have found some petrified remains, including a really, really large heart, which is larger than one of the largest footballs, as well as some remains in some areas. Now, some are claiming that those particular artifacts do date back to the times of the Anunnaki, and perhaps that they had already spread from Sumeria, Sumer, and those other areas all the way down to the lower parts of Africa, and in some cases to Adam's calendar, which is in South Africa at the same time. And because I've been to many of these sites and I had checked the energies in those sites, the energy is very different when you stand in the middle of those particular sites. And they seem to have a much higher frequency. And those frequencies, in some cases, create a situation where some of the stones, when you tap them, they actually ring like a bell. And that was extremely interesting because it seemed to tie in with the upper areas of Africa and Sumeria and other areas. And they all seem to have this single golden thread that weaves them all together. So I agree very much with Dr. Salla that there is probably areas that were very similar, that had been colonized by individuals, off-world individuals. And I would say that from what I've seen, most of Africa, the Anunnaki were prevalent across all of the African continent.
Thank you. All right, next question for Dr. Salla. Have the Anunnaki evolved into a hybrid reptilian species?
Well, as I understand it, the Anunnaki are a very ancient empire, a galactic empire within our solar system. Sorry, within our galaxy, and they have many different species that are part of their society, their galactic society. Some are human-looking, some are reptilian-looking, and more so than that. And there have been agreements, political arrangements. I mean, Elena Danaan talks about the two half-brothers that were sent to Earth to manage Earth and our solar system, Enki and Enlil, his half-brother. And she points out that Enki was human, I mean, fully human. Both his father and his mother were these human-looking extraterrestrials that were all human-looking Anunnaki. And his half-brother, Enlil, was half reptilian and half human, because his father Anu is this human Anunnaki, but his mother was a Draco princess that married Anu in a kind of a political marriage of convenience. So he was a half-breed, and that was the way it was done at the time, that as an empire you had many different racial groups that were part of that galactic civilization, and it's very ancient, and so it continues to this day. And so I would not know if it is evolving into a hybrid species. What I do know is that there have been kind of conflicts, or competition is maybe the better term, between the Anunnaki and the Draco reptilians. But somehow that competition has been managed in a way where they coexist. Both of those empires coexist, as well as many other empires and galactic organizations.
Got a question here from Sophia. What is Dr. Sala's opinion on the hybrid alien mummies found in Mexico?
Okay, very interesting. Now, I think that question might be referring to the hybrid alien mummies found in Peru, and there were a number of those that were found, and I think that is very likely a species indigenous to the Earth that we would consider like part human, part reptilian, or that they are a hybrid reptilian race, because that's one of the things that I've uncovered in my research, is that Earth has been a biological experiment for many different extraterrestrial civilizations over the course of millions of years. And that if we go back to the age of the dinosaurs, in that era, Earth's surface was very much a reptilian dominated planet. And you had intelligent reptilians that were in control of the surface of our planet. But then they were driven underground when there was the arrival of these human-looking groups. Some call them the Elohim, others call them the Seeders or the Founders, many different names, but these were predominantly human-looking groups. And they arrived and they said, well, for these reasons, the Earth is now going to become a genetic laboratory for human-looking species to survive, and so the surface is going to have a do-over. So you had the great devastation that ended the age of the dinosaurs, and then some of these intelligent reptilians that were able to develop advanced technologies or find their way into the inner Earth, they survived, and over the course of the many millions of years, I mean, they evolved into hybrid species. They would sometimes interact with surface humanity, creating hybrids and so forth. So I think that those Peruvian mummies are probably a crypto-terrestrial race. That is a race that is coming from under the Earth's surface, that has evolved here over the course of many millions of years, and it has clear reptilian characteristics.
Next question is from Jimmy. Do you believe the Nephilim, disembodied spirits, are the demons of today who are possessing the celebrities and elite?
Well, the Nephilim are described as the progeny of the fallen angels, and that the fallen angels arrived on Earth and they interbred with the daughters of Adam. That's how it's described in the Book of Enoch, and even in the Book of Genesis, you have a kind of much more brief description of that process. So the fallen angels, as I said, that they were these Igigi, or the faction of the Anunnaki that were kind of like the worker caste that had rebelled, but they had superior knowledge, they had technologies that they could kind of disseminate among their progeny. And so when they interbred with humans, how that was done, I'm not quite sure, but the fallen angels were very much physical, so were probably, and clearly giants, but somehow they were able to interbreed with the human females at the time. And that's probably not accidental, because we're talking about Zecharia Sitchin earlier, and the genetic experiments that led to the creation of humans, that Enki and his half-sister Ninhursag actually created the first humans, and they lent their genetics to that. So and so I think there was a core compatibility between the genetics of the human race that had been created, or those humans that had been created as a result of Enki's experiments, and the fallen angels that landed there on Mount Hermon, which very interestingly was just retaken by Israel from the Syrian regime. and so with that compatibility, they could easily interbreed because there was some common ancestry there with their genetics, and they created the giants. So the combination of the Nephilim, the breeding of the fallen angels with human women created the Nephilim, who are described as these giants that became the kind of the hybrid rulers of humanity for many thousands of years. And we see that in the Old Testament, where it talks about the Israelites who kind of like represent a kind of pure genetic line, a lineage. And I think this is part of the conflict between Israel and its neighboring states, is that there's an ancient conflict here between those that kept the kind of pure Adamic connections or genetics, and those whose genetics were kind of like tied into this breeding between the fallen angels and human women to create the Nephilim. And so I don't think, as far as this idea of the Nephilim being demons, I think the Nephilim were very physical beings. Now, what happened to them after they were slaughtered? I mean, the Old Testament describes the slaughter of these giant tribes throughout Palestine, and that's a whole story how that happened. Now, the spirits of those giants, of the Nephilim, I mean, they might well be considered demonic now, because they may have existed for a long time in that astral realm, and they want revenge.
This is the kind of question we've got to get Beverli's thoughts on as well, please.
Well, I think that some of the changes, when you look at the disembodied spirits, some might be Nephilim because they've been around for a long time and they can return back to energy, and everything across all universes is energy based anyway. But I personally don't believe, from the types of energies that I've seen in a lot of the celebrities, as in, the ones that are currently doing the rounds, none of them match the level of energy, electromagnetic field, and frequencies that I would expect to see with the Nephilim. So my view would be it's unlikely that the demons of today are the ones that are possessing the celebrities, because I think that those particular energetics from the types of experiments that I've run to look at what are the levels, those energies are quite low down, and they're not as high as the energies that would be expected, and the level of light that the Nephilim would have had. So in my view, I think it's unlikely that the Nephilim are those that are utilizing the husks or the bodies of some celebrities. I think that they're a much lower race, in my view.
Thank you. Next question is from Mary Ann. What does Dr. Salah think of the reptilian AI race that was created in the image? Are these the same black goo hive mind reptiles we are finding out about?
This is a very interesting question. I just did an interview with someone called Mac, who recalled a past life as a Draco reptilian, where he developed soul characteristics, or developed a soul. I mean, he says that because he was feeding on humans who possess souls, and he was a soulless Draco reptilian, that he had consumed so many humans that he had developed a soul, and because he had developed a soul, then the other Draco that were his kind of superiors noticed this and arranged for him to have the soul removed and for him to be killed, and that was a life that he recalled. And so we discussed that, but what he brought out was, I think, this very interesting question about, well, do the Dracos have souls or not? Well, I think that the Draco reptilians, I mean, like any intelligent species, began as soul-embodied beings, that they had souls, but somewhere along the line, or somewhere along their evolution, someone got the bright idea that they could begin cloning Draco bodies, and then having those bodies kind of like controlled by a AI intelligence. And I think, and you have this kind of black goo that was developed, and I think that has evolved over the course of many millennia to now where I don't know what the percentage is, but a large number of Draco reptilians are actually soulless AI automatons that are waging war against these ensouled species, especially human civilizations around the galaxy, because they have because they have a kind of hatred for beings and entities that are ensouled, because an ensouled being by definition cannot be controlled, because that ensouled being is a fractal of the universal source, and that universal source will try to express itself through an avatar in unique ways. Well, that doesn't kind of fit in with the imperial project of the Draco reptilians and their kind of and this AI intelligence, this black goo apparently that is responsible for controlling a large number of the Draco reptilians. Now, I've heard that there are many Draco reptilians, or a significant faction of the Dracos, who are rebels, and they are part of something called the Silver Legion, and that they have fought alongside human soul-embodied civilizations throughout the history. You know, there's the Orion Wars or so forth, because they were fighting against this kind of like expanding AI consciousness that was taking over more and more worlds as they cloned super soldiers, as they cloned Draco warriors who would be filled with this kind of AI consciousness. But Mac brought in a very interesting element, if we accept his testimony as correct, that even these AI infested Draco reptilians, because they feed on humans and that human flesh is ensouled to a certain degree, that they can develop qualities where all of a sudden, at some point, a soul can choose to kind of incarnate in that previously AI infested Draco reptilian, and then you have an ensouled Draco reptilian who could actually make decisions contrary to the kind of AI superintelligence or black goo that exists. So I think it's very fascinating questions to explore, especially now at this point in our history, as AI is really taking off, and the singularity point is not far off.
Got a super chat question from Nunya. Thank you. Are there snail-like beings? Snails are always with me.
I have not heard of snail-like beings. I mean, there are different insectoid races. I've heard of ant beings, but I have not heard of, that snail-like beings.
Kim wants to know what you think of rhesus negative blood.
Okay, well, that is a very interesting blood type. Because Rh positive supposedly is the blood type of humans that were, let's just say that they didn't have the same amount of genetics from the Anunnaki as those that are Rh negative. That the Rh negative, apparently they had more of the Anunnaki blood types or Anunnaki genetics in them, as opposed to the Rh positive. That's how I understand that.
Yeah, that's how I understand it too, particularly. And if they have the Rh negative, as well as particular traits like the red hair and also the hazel colored eyes, which are very rare even in humans at this time. There's less than 4% across the world that has this. And this is why we see the Rh negative being posed amongst blood banks as the savior blood, because the Rh negative can be used to save anyone's life, irrespective of their main blood type. It mixes freely with all blood types and doesn't cause any issues at all. And I agree with Dr. Salla that part of my thinking has been that it all tracks back to the original colonizers, or some people call them seeders, and that the RH factor, particularly when you start tracking that back to, some of the creationism theories, where they're saying that it was from one type of person, one type of male, one type of female. This is where we start questioning the blood types, and how would it be possible then to have one person only with one type of blood type? That means also you question the blood types of the theory, the Darwinism theory, because, we've got a particular bloodline with apes and with monkeys, and they only have one blood type, that's it. And so that would mean if that was a correct theory, that theory would mean then that we should all just be either A or B, which is monkey and ape type of blood types, and that doesn't wash either. And yet we have the Rh negative too, which is the savior blood type that we can use on pretty much any human. So it opens a lot of areas for further discussion.
All right, thank you, Beverli. All right, next question is from Jordan. Can you expand on Southwest Native American tribes called Star People? Is there a connection with Atlantis?
Okay, well, the Native American peoples talk about the Star People as coming at some point in their history and helping them in terms of philosophy, and helping them overcome the great cycles that you have, the kind of end of the first and the beginning of the second world, and second world, third world, and that the Star Peoples were associated with the establishment of the Native American tribes. And we're not just talking about North America or the Americas, where we're talking about the Pacific as well, because they also have the same legends of the Star People arriving and founding their race. But there was also this phenomenon whereby at a time of great cataclysm, where there would be earth changes, that the Star People would play a role in helping the Native Americans in particular find these civilizations, these underground civilizations like the Ant People, who would give them shelter during the earth changes, and that could last a very long time. And it also raises this issue of these space arcs, where these Star People would arrive and they would take those that were ready for it onto these space arcs, and they would be evacuated for the planet until the earth changes were over, and then they would bring them back. And I think this is part of the legends of the Native Americans and indigenous peoples around the world that talk about the Star People, like helping establish their race, or helping them survive great cataclysms.
Anything to add there, Beverli?
Yeah, I've been having a lot of discussions with various Native American Indian tribes, and they have been sharing a lot of aspects regarding the Ant People particularly, because I have seen the Ant People's cities, which are underground, and I was really lucky to be able to talk to them about what they see with the Star People. And it's so interesting because they talk quite openly, and they also have been speaking about the fact that they have had these peoples visiting their tribes for centuries, and it seems like just par for the course for them. They're quite used to them coming in their crafts, arriving and talking and taking smoke, and being around the fire with them and leaving again. So it's a very interesting time that the Star People have been coined by the American Native Indians for some time. And I think if we were able to have further open discussions with them, we would be able to learn a lot more from them.
Thank you. Thank you, viewers, for all the fantastic questions. So Heather wants to know, where did the Greys fit into all of this?
The Greys are a very interesting race. I think what has happened is that, I mean, you go back millions of years and humanity was created by the Anunnaki, by many different extraterrestrial species that came in, tinkered with the biology, upgraded it here and there. And so Homo sapiens are a product of millions of years of genetic engineering and natural selection. And so we're a kind of very robust species. Now you have the Greys arriving. And I think that now some people believe that the Greys are us from the future. I don't believe that. I think that that's kind of like a deception that they use to infiltrate societies and kind of like take advantage of people's natural empathy. I think what they tried to do was that they saw humanity as pretty naive as far as the majority of the population is concerned. And so they decided that they would start their own genetic program, that they would take advantage of governments around the world by these kind of like agreements and by these kind of like Trojan horse type crash retrieval operations. And they understood human psychology. So they understood that if these human leaders were interacting with these short 3 foot, 4 foot tall Greys, that the humans would develop a superiority complex and think that the Greys could be easily manipulated. So they reached agreements thinking that, we'll get the Grey genetics we'll get the Grey technologies, and the Greys will pick up a few humans here and there and conduct biological experiments, and that's a pretty good deal for us. Well, it turned out that the Greys didn't live up to their word at all. They were abducting millions of people. They were conducting massive experimentation to create a hybrid race, and they thought that in the span of a few decades that they could create a hybrid race that would be robust enough to supplant humans, that this hybrid Grey race would be able to, because of its superior intellect and psychic abilities, would be able to take over the planet. But I mean, they made a fatal flaw. And I interviewed Dr. John Brandenburg, and if you haven't interviewed him, he has a very good explanation for this. To put it simply, I mean, he just said that the Grey blood type is copper based, and human blood is iron based, and despite the Greys' best scientific efforts to kind of create a robust hybrid who could flourish on the earth, all of their hybrids were predominantly weak and anemic and just couldn't handle earth conditions, and so it was a massive failure. And then you get the information from Elena Danaan, which I think is also a big part of the puzzle here. She described these Grey ships containing hundreds of millions of hybrids that were placed in this kind of hidden zone of I can't remember what nebula it was, but that they were in this place, and the intention was that they would have been the race, the hybrids that would have taken over the earth, but that in fact, if what Brandenburg said is accurate, then this experiment was a failure. So that's why the hybrids were kind of left out there in the outer regions of the galaxy, or in some place interdimensionally where they would just wait, and eventually they've begun dying out. So yeah, I mean, that's a long answer to that question, but that's as best as I can understand, that the Greys tried to pull a fast one and take over and supplant humanity, but in the end they failed.
You've had quite a few people ask about this subject. The Pope opening portals and Lucifer's tomb. what were they all about?
You know, I know about CERN. I know about they having set up the Large Hadron Collider with the purpose of being able to the purpose of creating very powerful portals that could reach far out into not just our galaxy but into the universe, and that they wanted a very powerful particle accelerator to be able to create some portal that would have this ability to be able to open up our planet to other realms that some might say are demonic. So this is where the Pope and Lucifer kind of come into this picture, that this is probably what those scientists and secret societies that were behind the Large Hadron Collider were trying to do. They were trying to open up a portal to this very dark Luciferian energy somewhere in the galaxy and enable that to come here. Now, I don't think that they succeeded. As far as I know, they've had a lot of problems because there's a lot of positive races here that understood what was going on, and a lot of white hats who were tipped off what was going on. And so they made sure that the Hadron Collider was kind of sabotaged or tweaked with in so that they couldn't succeed. But I think that would be my best guess as to what the Pope was doing and this kind of Lucifer connection.
Most definitely. And of course we've got the issue with the weather, particularly with them being able to cloak areas so that those that are making sure that this particular opening of any portals would not happen. And I know that part of what the Pope was trying to do with the portal particularly, although he was 50 years before his time, because they changed the time frame from every 100 years to every 50 years, plus what they were trying to do with the Luciferian portal. There is an area called the Cube, which holds some of the strongest and most evil intent individuals that are both off-worlders as well as those that have been here with us on Earth. They've been removed. And the Cube was part and parcel of that particular opening that was meant to happen. We had a significant fog that's not been seen in the UK and across Europe for around about 2 or 3 days. And part of the reason for that was in order to cloak individuals and crafts that were stopping exactly that, stopping the Pope and his areas from opening a direct channel to the Cube. And there's a lot of individuals across the world, light warriors particularly, that were sending light and working with individuals that were trying to stop that from happening. And I believe that has been halted. So we'll obviously know more in the time in the years to come. We'll be able to see whether this was successful or not.
Thank you. Next question is from Ada J. What are your thoughts on the origin of Thoth and the Emerald Tablets?
Toth is a very interesting entity. I mean, he is clearly one of the gods of the Egyptian pantheon, and he was a being of great wisdom, a master alchemist, that he had the secret of life extension. He could prolong life, and he is someone that presumably could be or became an immortal himself. Now, I think he is connected with the Sumerian equivalent, who was Ningish Zida, who was also a master alchemist, and Ningish Zida was the god of the good tree. And so I think that Toth and Ningish Zida are probably one and the same. Others say that Hermes Trismegistus was also Toth, that Toth is a kind of like an eternal who possesses all of the ancient alchemical secrets. He can prolong life and has that ability to be able to share kind of advanced secrets for people that are ready for it in these secret organizations or secret societies, you might call that. So I think he is someone that is relevant even today to our planet. One of the people I work with is a recently retired military veteran who just uses the acronym JP because he hasn't revealed his full identity yet. But he says that he went into a large cavern in southern Florida where he saw a giant in a crypt who was asleep next to what appeared to be a kind of like tree that was emitting this kind of rejuvenating water. So, was that the tree of life described in the Bible? But one of the things that what we found out later was that giant, that was Ningish Zida, and possibly just another name for Toth, and also there are South American names for him as well, like Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan. So this, I think, it is a very important. Toth is a very important entity that I think spans different cultures and possesses all of this ancient knowledge and wisdom, and protects it and will hand it over to people who are ready. But in the different cultures, he's known by other names.
Sunshine wants to know, what are your thoughts on Admiral Byrd and Middle Earth?
Well, Admiral Byrd, I mean, he did travel to Antarctica on several occasions and the North Pole as well. He was a great Arctic explorer. And the probably the best known story was when he traveled into the land of the Ariani, and this is where this was during Operation High Jump, and in the kind of like Antarctic summer of 1946-47, that he traveled there, and that he went underground, or he went into the center of the earth through this opening there in the South Pole, and he met the Ariani, who were a very advanced culture. They were an inner earth civilization, and they warned Byrd about the dangers of the atomic weapons that humanity used and humanity's propensity for warfare, that the knowledge and the secrets of ancient civilizations and societies would be protected and kept from surface humanity as long as they kept this kind of warlike mindset and developed these atomic weapons that they would use, and that could lead to disaster. And that until humans were ready to kind of like walk away from their warlike propensity, then the Ariani would just stay behind the scenes, or stay in the inner earth, and not come out and share their technologies or their wisdom. Now that takes us to the present time, and it seems that we to a certain extent have harnessed or have prevented that kind of warlike tendency to lead to another global conflagration. I mean, there's a lot of proxy wars happening all over the earth, but by and large, the major powers have kind of kept a lid on things getting out of hand. That we've got the black hats and the white hats kind of like struggling against one another, positive extraterrestrials coming in greater and greater numbers to our planet. And it seems that this kind of propensity for warfare is being suppressed, and which is why it's a good thing that Donald Trump was elected president, because he's on the record saying that he wants to put an end to these wars. Now, he's a negotiator. He's all about making deals, and this is something that's in alignment with not just the inner Earth civilizations, but also the visiting extraterrestrials. And as we kind of like curb that warlike tendency and establish peace in more and more parts of the planet, that the inner Earth civilizations, the Ariani, the Ant people, there are kind of other human-looking extraterrestrials or other human-looking crypto-terrestrials that have been living under the Earth's surface or under the oceans, and of course the extraterrestrials themselves, the Pleiadians, the Sirians, the Andromedans. They are also ready to reveal themselves, and we're kind of getting closer and closer to that every day.
Right, we have got 4 minutes left before the next guest, Jaguar Wright, comes in. There's 110 questions unanswered, so perhaps we should bring Dr. Salla back sooner than waiting another 2 to 3 years. But we'll just finish off with this question. If I could just get maybe a couple of minutes each off you on this one from Lorraine. Was the moon brought here by off-worlders to help protect us?
I think the moon was definitely brought here from off-world or from another location in our solar system. But I don't think it was here to put there to protect us. I think it was put there to watch us and to be used as a base of operations to control us, because especially the far side of the moon, is ideal for being able to secretly monitor, control the Earth through these advanced technologies that the extraterrestrials have there. There's a lot of kind of history to the moon and how that has been used as a base for these off-world civilizations, and even some of the inner Earth civilizations also apparently established colonies on the moon too. So it is something that does have great significance.
All right. So, Beverli, what's your thoughts on the moon and off-worlders?
Yes, I do. I think that Dr. Sala's right particularly about the far side or the back side of the moon. There's a lot of talk about using it as a jumping off point, and also using those areas to make changes and to have some of the troops that we know are up there at the moment, to have them regulated and change the shifts. But we also have a section that is focused on monitoring Earth in specific places, because we're heading for tremendous growth over the next few years, and we are finally awakening. We're not the sheeple that we used to be, and I think that this has created the moon base as such is extremely interesting for a lot of the off-world societies and beings to utilize, to watch what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we're progressing.
Well said. All right, then. So, Dr. Salla, huge thank you. I've got all of your links in the description for the viewers. I see you've got your YouTube channel as well. What can people look forward to at your channel?
Well, I do a weekly week in review where I go over the major exopolitical events that week. I do a monthly briefing now that people can participate in through Patreon. And in May, from May 10 to 11, I'll be visiting Eastbourne, and I'll be part of the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection Conference that Danny Henderson is organizing there. So I hope to be able to meet you there, Sean and Beverli.
Well, yeah, you will definitely, because we're staying at the View Hotel, and we will most definitely be doing a breakfast with Beverli, and we're going to be having lots of different filming opportunities for this channel. So I'm pretty sure that we'll definitely be meeting you. It'll be great.
Yeah, I'll have to get that on the calendar. Can't wait to meet you in person. How exciting, both of you. All right, well, thank you for joining us. Like I said, viewers, all links in the description. I'm going to let these guys go now and close the show. And huge thank you, Beverli, and huge thank you, Dr. Salla. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you both. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Sean.
Cheers, bye. Wow, what fantastic guests. Absolutely fascinating, mind-blowing knowledge there. And thank you for all of your questions as well. You know, it's a testament to how interesting the guests are when that many questions come in. And some really funny questions came in. And I actually should give the funniest ones a free audiobook, I think. Let me see. There was one what is it? It was about Joe Biden. There's so many. I'm scrolling through them right now. Is Joe Biden Anunnaki? That one certainly amused me. I can't remember who sent it in. This probably wasn't a good idea when there's so questions, try and cherry pick the funniest ones. I was going goggle-eyed right now, trying to. Oh, that was a good one. Do aliens have a soul like us? I would be very interested to know that. Yeah, is Joe Biden extraterrestrial? From Sofa Potato. Go to my website, seanatwood.com, hit the contact page, send me an email. I'll send you a free audio book. Sofa Potato for putting that question in. Tough Gemini, we cannot talk about the Adreno Kool-Aid. My friend Mark Atwood lost his channel over that. But send me an email. I'll send you a free audio book. Let me see if I can find any more funny ones before we go over to Jaguar. Pyramids of Giza, that's a good one. Yeah, I would be fascinated by that. Someone was talking about the aliens eating people. All right, let me just tell you guys what's coming up before I go over to Jaguar. We have got we've got a 2-hour show after this with Jag, and hopefully Greg is back from the Good Ratchet channel, who's getting harassed by Jay-Z. And then we've got Shane is starting his own show called Shane and Friends, starting at midnight. Tomorrow we've got the New Year's Eve Psychic Mega Marathon, trying to clear all your chats and questions. That's gonna run. And then on New Year's Day we've got OG Shadow live. If you're not familiar with OG Shadow, he's just got out of prison. He was with us for years reporting on the Mexican cartel in Mexico. Really brave guy, and he ended up getting put in prison for it. So he's coming back. And then we've got possibly a Diddy survivor and Courtney Burgess, part 3. And then Tommy on Thursday night. All right, guys, I'm going to log off. This should transport you over to the Jaguar right live. If it doesn't, hit the channel icon and it will take you directly there. And if you want to kick it with Shane later on at 12:30, last time Shane went live, it ended up going on for 12 hours.